I'm Neil McDonnell. I'm the president of the GovCon Chamber of Commerce, and I want to welcome you to my daily LinkedIn Live, where I discuss process and procedures for you to achieve success in federal government marketing or sales. I've spent 20 years as a small business owner in the federal government, and since 2018, I've been helping folks just like you understand that government contracting is not a secret. It's just a process. So I want to talk to you about more on the process today with a topic that's near and dear to my heart, making first impressions, or really what I would call it as just making good impressions. I know I titled today's LinkedIn Live, Making Good First Impressions, but sometimes you don't make a good first impression. You're coming back. It doesn't matter if it's the second, third, or fourth. It's really about what can you do to make good impressions. You just decide whether you want to take one time to make that impression or whether you want to take 10 times, but you can still make good impressions and you can still come back. So I'm going to walk you through 10 tips I have. Happy to share these tips afterwards. If anybody wants a copy of the tips, I can send them to you. Just message me in the commenting that you'd like a copy of it. So the first thing that I recommend people do to make a good first impression happens long before you even talk to somebody. And this is do your research or homework. We often hear that in an agency, you need to do your homework. And that was one of the most frustrating things for me as a business owner to hear, because what do you mean? And if you go to the GovCon Chamber, you'll see a whole tab of homework that we've put in there. And all it means is understand the agency that you're going to pursue. So if you're going to meet with somebody at the Air Force or the Navy, understand their command structure, how their organization is laid out, specifically into a particular command that you're going to visit. Take a minute to read their strategic documents, look at their challenges and goals. If you do that, you will have researched and done your homework before having a meeting. You will make a good first impression because you will come across as somebody who cared enough to understand the person you're meeting with instead of making them regurgitate everything that's on their website. So number one, do your research and homework. And I apologize, I'm just still dealing with this little allergy stuff and I got to take my water breaks, but the topic is solid and the tips will be great. So the second thing is have a brief agenda or a purpose statement in the invite. So sometimes we send meeting invites, calendar invites to somebody who's agreed to a meeting and it's just empty. I mean, maybe it's got a little subject line or title, but you've got a whole body in there. In that body, just take a minute to say what the purpose is. And this does two things, right? First, it gives a little clarity to the person you sent it to days after you guys have agreed to a meeting when they go, who is this guy, Neil? Why are we meeting? I forget, Remember, generally, we're talking about first impressions here. So it's basically cold calls or new calls. And so you want to remind them the purpose is an introduction to GovCon Chamber of Commerce, as well as a discussion about NAVC's challenges and goals or something, right? Whatever your purpose is for the call, if you take a minute to put it in, it helps everybody stay on the same page, but it also shows a level of professionalism, just a little hint at it, attention to detail professionalism there that shows the other person that you've thought ahead, right? It doesn't mean you win contracts. It's just this subliminal thing that this person was squared away enough to put in a brief agenda or purpose statement within the invite. So when I look at it, I'm quickly reminded of what it is. So that's the second one. Third tip on how to make great first impressions is to send a read ahead, and that could be anything out there. And generally for most of us, it's a capability statement. Send that 48 hours before a meeting. So as much as you can, always schedule that first meeting you're going to have a week ahead of time, right? I mean, a week out. So if I want to have a meeting with somebody, it'll be at least next Wednesday before I have it. And the primary reason is just now that I have the meeting scheduled, I can do more research and be prepared. And so 48 hours to me would be Monday of next week. Let's say I schedule it Wednesday of next week. Monday, I would send us a meeting invite. Hey, Jane, I'm looking forward to our meeting. I just wanted to send you my capability statement as a way for you to be able to understand a bit more about what we do before I reach you and meet with you and talk to you about what we do. This is good on so many levels. It first off reminds the person that you got to meet, they've got a meeting with you coming up, right? It also gives them a chance to research you and come better prepared to help you, or in this case, right, help me in that meeting I've scheduled with them. But the biggest thing is in the federal government, when you're selling to the federal government, most people in there are used to read aheads being done 48 hours ahead of time. You meet with your boss in there, you meet, briefing the commander or something, and you have a read ahead sent 48 hours out so they can look through it. And by the time they get there, they're not looking at slides, they're looking at you. And that's what you want. You want to be able to send a capability statement that they look at, and then they're focused on you and what you have to say instead of seeing it for the first time. But it also allows them to feel like they can be prepared, and they want to feel confident as a meeting participant. So sending this read ahead 48 hours, often just your capability statement, it could also be your briefing deck. Never try to be secret and sneak up on it. It's like, oh, I don't want to send it to them ahead of time because they'll go in different directions. I used to be that way. I'm like, I want to brief it in my way. And it didn't matter what I did. When I sat down to brief it in my way, they would flip through really quick. I'm like, where are you going? I've got an efficient way we're going to go through this meeting. That wasn't their interest, right? They were looking for something very specific. So this is a great way to make a first impression because they know you're prepared coming to their meeting 48 hours later. All right, so that was the third one. The fourth one, be respectful of their time. And I got a great story on this one, but basically what this means is never be late to a meeting. But even more important to never being late to a meeting is always end the meeting 5 minutes early. So if you've ever been into a meeting where people are late, in your office or with customers or whatever, what you find is people's days begin to get out of control because they're late from one meeting to another and to another. And one of the best things you can do is say, look, I know, especially if they're late to your meeting, still end on time. You can always come back for a second meeting, but boy, the impression you will make when you sit there and say, look, I know we got till this time. We have 5 minutes left. Let's go ahead and wrap up. Let's talk about the action items so that I can get you out of here and make sure I'm not pressing you too much against your next meetings. And then we can follow up or something. There's a lot of ways to talk about it, but basically get out of a meeting on time. That way they would love for you to be able to give them that time back and they don't feel pressed, right? Maybe they can go grab that yogurt they wanted between meetings to get a little energy back. The other thing I said in the beginning, right? Never be late to a meeting. This is a decision. And this is really important to remember. There's no excuse for being late to a meeting. I'm in the DC area. We've got the Beltway, and Beltway traffic, you could be somewhere in 30 minutes or 2 hours. I think the only other place that's as bad is LA, right? So those two places, it's completely unpredictable. But you live there, you know that. And if you're flying into DC, you should know this. You should learn it. But you can always get somewhere really, really early, sit in your car and work on other stuff, and then just walk in 5 minutes, ahead of time or whatever. If you're virtual, you should never be late. You should be there 3 to 5 minutes early. And these are things you can do, little things that just show a ton of respect to the other person you're meeting with, and they'll thank you for it. Inside their head, if that's all they do, they're like, oh my goodness, somebody who shows up. So I was telling you a quick story. I went to the Defense Intelligence Agency, a customer of mine in the past. And I went to a meeting. It was with a new group of people in there. But I went to the meeting. I did my typical show up early. So I showed up, I think I was basically 45 minutes early. And this one, I happened to even get there earlier than I planned because traffic that I expected just didn't happen. But I was there 45 minutes early. And what happened in there is right when I was pulling up to go in, the whole base shut down because there was security issues. And it shut down for 30 minutes. I was kind of freaking out, and I texted the guy I was meeting with. I'm like, hey, I'm outside the gate. They closed down the entire campus. I'll keep you informed. Long story short, I get in there. I'm pressed for me, but I'm still 10 minutes early. He comes down and gets me. And at the same time, he goes, hey, do you mind if we meet with somebody else at the same time? Because I had this other small business who was going to meet with me before you, but they were running late. And so they weren't able to get in. And you were early, and now maybe I can do it. And so he's looking at them like they're late, and he's looking at me like I had the same incident, but I was early. You can do this just by making a decision to show up. So not to pontificate on that, but it's a great way to make an impression is just respect their time. Okay, number 5, listen twice as much as you talk. This is that 2-ear thing, right? Is that you've got 2 ears, 1 mouth, use them in proportion. You want to go into a meeting and show somebody and make a good first impression. Well, if you're meeting with a potential buyer, they didn't go to that meeting to hear you talk, unless, of course, you're there to brief them on some technology that's different. But if you're asking them questions, can you tell me about your challenges? Or, hey, we're looking to go this direction. Just something as straightforward as listening to them will make a good first impression. Because one of my favorite lessons I heard from this lady, Anna Ehrman, who's a great person in the GovCon world. She's at the State Department now, but she said when she was working at a PTAC, if all you ever did was just do what we tell you to do, then we would, want to help you all day long. And it's the same thing with the customer. If all you would do is listen to what I'm telling you in relations to your questions, then I would want to share more information. I would want to introduce you to other people. And so you'll make a good first impression if you're listening. And just a sidebar, a great way to show you're listening is to be writing notes and asking related questions, compared to listening and then asking a completely unrelated question. That's a whole sidebar, but listen is twice as much as you speak, and you'll be making a great first impression. So number 6, when you go into a meeting, and I talked about this with the invite, but when you go into a meeting, you want to have a clear stated purpose. And what that means is the reason we're here is to talk about this. And what I like to do is to get the other person to agree to it before I even begin, because yes, we think we agree to it, but hey, the reason we're here is because I want to introduce you to the GovCon Chamber of Commerce, and I'd like to learn more about your agency and really how we might fit in supporting you on your mission needs. Does that sound good to you? And rarely do they ever say no, because I'm the one setting up the meeting. So they're generally there for whatever I'm saying. But what they like is that, okay, great, we've got a specific purpose we're trying to go here. It's not this vague, random set of conversations we're having. And so going in with a clear stated purpose will make them understand that you've done your preparation, you know what you want, and that type of stuff makes a good first impression. By the way, so as I'm saying these, if any of these make sense to you and you've done them before and you really think other people should be doing them, give it a thumbs up. Actually, if you can remember the numbers, I'd be really surprised if you put in, hey, number 4 was great or something. So that was 6, right? Number 7. And this is a weird one. Let me take a sip of water. I'm kind of dying here. Number 7 is, this is a favorite tip of mine. Watch some comedy before you go into a meeting. And it doesn't matter what kind of comedy. It could be raunchy comedy, if that's your comedy, or it could be children's stupid humor. Like I got 8-year-olds, and so I'm watching some of their, or listening to some of their jokes or something. Whatever makes you belly laugh when you're watching it, watch it before you go in. Watch a little bit of your favorite comedian, and what it will do is change your energy. So there's this idea of when you go into a meeting and you're trying to make a first impression. In sales, we say smile. Always be smiling. Even if you're picking up the phone and calling somebody, smile. Thank you. I just saw some comments there. Smile, right? And when you smile, it'll come through the phone as positive energy, right? Not trying to get all guru on you here, but when you smile, people just can feel that energy, compared to if I have a resting, man, I don't want to be here face, right? And they can feel that as well. It's like, well, if you don't want to be here, Neil, then why do I want to be here? But if I smile like I'm excited to be at the meeting, they almost begin to wonder why they're feeling this excitement to be at the meeting as well. Well, it's hard to do that if you don't have experience in sales. I have experience in sales where I've been developing that, where I naturally switch into my, let's make sure I'm bringing my positive energy to the meeting. In fact, right now in this LinkedIn Live, right? And if you've watched me the past couple of days, I've been sick. Before and afterwards, I'm like, right? But when I come to you, I'm sitting up and I'm trying to lean forward. I'm trying to bring a positive energy to it, maybe more than I feel at the moment. Well, that comes from experience, ability to do it. One tip for you on how you can bring that energy if you're newer to trying to think that way is just watch comedy. Because if you watch comedy right before you're going into a meeting and you're laughing your head off, when you switch over, your body and inside you, you're still kind of laughing, you're still feeling that energy. And when you see this person, you don't have to think about giving them positive energy. You don't have to think about smiling. You won't be able to help it because you're still feeling good about that humorous comedian, that joke you just heard, or that 5-minute little riff on something. You'll just like it, and you'll feel that energy, and that will come across to the other person and be like, oh, this is a happy person. So keep that in mind. Watch some comedy. It's a great tip for getting into that right smiley mode when you go in. But that makes a good first impression. No one wants to run into, mopey, complaining Neil. What they want is, hey, upbeat Neil, everything's going good. Let's address the mission. Let's have a good meeting. All right, number 8, which is funny. So apparently number 8, as I wrote this down, is the exact same as number 7. So I'm tired, but I'm saying smile inside and out from the jokes, and it's the same thing. So let me dive into number 9, and I'll break number 9 into 2, and then I'll count it as 10. So have a call plan. I've said this over and over again. These last 3 are going to be the top 3 tips for making a great first impression. Have a call plan. A call plan is just a document. I've got a template. You can ask me for it later, but it's a document that guides your call. And when you properly prepare a call plan, you will understand your purpose and objective for the call, be able to communicate to that to the other person. You will have questions clearly laid out. So if my objective is to go from a small business specialist into the director of cloud or the cloud engineering shop at the Army or something, my questions will lead in that direction, and they will understand through my call plan sheet that I have done my homework, that I have prepped, that I'm respectful of their time, that I'm not randomly asking questions. I actually prepared it. And so having a call plan sheet is really important for making a good first impression. That's one tip, right? And I said I'll break it into 2. The second tip here is tell them. If you want to make a good first impression, let them know that you're trying to make a good first impression this way by telling them, hey, I prepared this call plan sheet. I wanted to make sure I respected your time. I've got 7 questions that I wrote down that I want to use to guide us through our talk today. And so if it's all right with you, you might see me looking down and kind of marking it off. I say that even as a very experienced person, because it invites the other person into my call plan. And 9 times out of 10 or 99 times out of 100, they're like, no, that sounds good. Let's go to your plan and let's start working it. And often they'll even help me finish the 7 questions I just said I had by saying, Neil, you only asked 6. What's that 7th one? And we'll go into it. That by inviting them in, by letting them know that I have this call plan, it is a way to make a great first impression because they know I just prepared for the meeting. And more often than not, they're in meetings where people didn't prepare at all. So that one little thing. Okay. And then the last tip, and I'm going to give you the last tip. It's one of my most favorite ones. And it's why I saved it for last. But if you found this content valuable and you think others will too, give it a thumbs up. Last tip, send a thank you note before you send meeting minutes. And what I mean is send a thank you note 2 hours, not before 2 hours. Give them a little breather from you having left them, but then send them a thank you note. Nowadays, email's perfect. Send them a thank you note. And the only thing that is in this email is your sincere thanks for them making time available to meet with you, right? I really want to thank you for taking the time to meet with me. The information you shared, it was awesome. I'll follow up later with meeting minutes. I just wanted to say thank you. Nobody sends thank you notes anymore. And is that a broad generalization? Yes, of course it is. But thank you notes are so rare that when you send one, it adds to making that good first impression. Frankly, it's just good professional behavior, right? It doesn't mean you're bad if you're not doing it, but it does mean you're going to the next level of attention to detail in what you're doing to trying to impress, because we are all trying to make good impressions with the people we meet with, other small businesses, large businesses, agency representatives. We're trying to make a good impression with them so that we can build a relationship that we just started into a long-term relationship that leads to federal revenue. And so if you send them a thank you note, few hours later, but still on that same business day. Don't wait another business day. If you send it 2 hours later, it will just go in their head. It doesn't matter if they even get back to you. It'll go in their head. They're the only ones that ever sent me a thank you note, or, that was such a nice thank you note. And the next day you send them meeting minutes. And I don't want to get into that, right? But so there you go. You got 10 tips for make it a good first impression. I want to look, see if there's any questions here. Call template. Absolutely, Jeremy. Call plan. Yep. Love to get a copy of the tips and the plan sheet. John, absolutely. So Jeremy said something that I love, right? Is Jeremy, I'd argue that emails aren't overused, but your tip in the comments is spot on. Jeremy's saying he prefers to actually send a physical card in the mail. I'm telling you right now, if you take the time to do that, when I said 99 out of 100 don't do an email, 999 out of 1,000, and you could probably take that to the next digit, don't ever send a physical thank you card. They might send Thanksgiving cards or something, right? But they don't send thank you cards. But you could have that thing written before you even go into the meeting. And you come out, you put in one little note that specializes it to the meeting you just had, pop it into the mailbox on the way home. Or if you even did a virtual meeting, you just, walk out to your mailbox, flip the little lever up, says you got mail in there, throw a card. Discipline is just identifying the right thing and doing it over and over again. And so what Jeremy said right there, Jeremy, I love that one. Okay, so let me wrap up here. Appreciate you joining. Again, give it a thumbs up if you found value. Leave a comment. Love to see those comments. I wanted to invite you, if you'd like to join me later on today and see how my voice lasts. I've got a webinar I'm going to go rest for with Delmar Pitak out of Texas. And I'm going to be talking about being where the buyer is. So when they're looking to find businesses like yours, you need to be here. And I'll talk about the marketing tips that relate to that at a webinar. It's 3 p.m. East Coast time. So go on my LinkedIn profile. You'll find stuff in there. Or Gus, you might drop a link. The other thing is I'm doing a webinar on how to start and build relationships that lead to federal revenue on May 3rd. I'd love to have you in there. Or if you know other people who might be interested in that, have them come over. It's like a little mini masterclass, if you will, on starting and building relationships. So you can learn more about that on govconchamber.com. Last thing is, remember, government contracting, it's not a secret. It's just a process. I'll see you next time.